Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's very public discussion of the latest chapter in The Wandering Inn, chapter 8.82, the penultimate chapter of the volume. It's been a banger. It's 50,000 words. Pirate wrote a goddamn volume. Sorry, not even a volume. What am I saying? A book. I don't want arguments about whether it's a book or not. I've been around long enough. I know the fucking publishing industry. It's a book. And we're here with all these people today on Sunday, and we're going to talk about it. I think I'm hosting with Mr. Wiggles and Kermit. So, Mr. Wiggles, you want to start us off with the first question we have for today? We're going to do some pre-arranged topic discussions. Everybody can take a look at the doc and see what we're going to go over, and then we're going to hop right into any questions you have. One note for anybody who put up a question in the doc: try to claim it, put your name on it, so we can ask you to come up and chat about it, or even just elaborate about things, because sometimes questions can get a little confusing or maybe misinterpreted. It's easier if we hear from you. Okay, that's it.
Yep. So first off, we're going to just start out with what everyone's general impressions are of the chapter. As in, how'd you feel about it? Anything you want to say on the chapter as a whole? Basically, what you felt getting through this chapter and how you feel about the end of the volume coming. Since we only have one more chapter left until this volume, which is basically the biggest volume we've had so far, is over. How about go ahead, Oshi.
Let's start with Mr. Kermit. ActionKermit, what'd you think of it?
Let's see. Overall impressions of what happened in the chapter. It was a big deal. Just everything happening at once in there. It was such a big chaotic fight. We just started out with the introduction of Chalyon, making our move, and the shift in the Chalion's behavior of inviting some of the greater souls of the ghost to join in, what makes Chalyon herself, can potentially change things a lot. We don't see any other gods doing that, but it seems like it might be a hint of a way forward for them at some point. But yeah, this was just all over the place, and Terriarch dying, and it was, jeez. So I'm very interested to see where this is going. It was a lot to take in very fast.
All right, we have a Lenu. You wanted to speak? Go ahead.
Yes, I want to speak because this was really like super emotional chapter for me. I didn't expect Terriarch to die there, and when he died, I started crying. And like soon after, not even like waiting a week or more, or like a year for Erin, we had Terriarch resurrection. So for me, it was like crying twice, because firstly because he died, and then second time because he was resurrected. So first I had tears of sadness, and then I had tears of joy. So for me, very emotional chapter.
Okay. LeChad Demon says, I felt the latest chapters have kind of been rushed in the sense that moments that were meant to be huge were getting punched through others, just as important events. I asked in the thing, but what made it feel rushed for you? Does anyone else share that feeling? While people are thinking that over and typing up their responses, I'm going to say my reaction to this. I actually kind of agree a little bit with LeChad. I think it's a consequence of the structure of the volume itself. You have to think about the fact that Pirates set up so many, like, it's like one of those, what do they call them? The when you set up all those little things that you knock over at once. Does anyone know what they are? I don't remember what they're called. But in that perfect order,
Dominoes?
Yeah, some dominoes, yes. So the dominoes have all been properly laid out in this intricate pattern, and Pirates just hit it at once, and within minutes they're all following. They're all following, and they're providing us this big picture. So what we're getting is the big picture, but the individual events as the individual dominoes fall is harder for us to see. And that's by design. There is no fucking way Pirate could have given the kind of time and effort into this I mean, it's already 50,000 words for one chapter. Imagine trying to give that level of complexity and time that the entire volume has given to the individual events, sans the newt, which I hate. Okay, just
I
as a
love the
follow.
newt.
That we'll talk about the Lechad says just that in the past, events like an important character dying were were a big deal, but here it was a rush of dominoes following. Exactly, but that rush is, I think, intentional. Sarah Deburi, Shadow Creeper Instigator is their class. The entire Deathland sequence felt rushed and somewhat wrong. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Give us an example of what you mean by somewhat wrong. Okay, we have Bookworm. To my Domino's comment says Chekhov's firing squad. Well, yeah, that does kind of feel like what it was. Okay, while everybody's typing away, Mr. Wheels, you want to contribute your opinion about?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed the chapter overall, and there was there's a bunch of scenes happening right now that are all coming together, and I really enjoy that kind of convergence of plots at the very end of volumes. Like it feels very much like an epic story all coming together at once, and I think these last few chapters and this chapter have all really captured that feeling. And in addition to that, I really like how there are just like little moments added into the chapter, like the King of Avil, whatever his name is. I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but him just like napping on the throne, acting kind of childish. It's always great to see those little character moments being put into these big long chapters. So it just really it's something I love about TWI that we still get these little moments even when we have these giant epic chapters.
Okay. Mystical Pie says, I feel like in the past volumes, there were multiple chapters spent setting up each individual plotline. It just isn't realistic to give that amount of page space to resolving all of these simultaneously. Every chapter has at least 2 to 3 plot lines, making tons of progress, when in the past we had pretty slow movement. Vesker says, yeah, it's a little much back to back. It feels a little like waiting a whole year for the New Year's fireworks, and it's all amazing. But now it's 5 a.m. and I'm getting colder. That's a good example, right? You feel good in the moment, but you're left a little cold in the aftermath. But again, is it intentional? I think so, and I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but I enjoyed it. Hellfire Blue says, yes, I agree, it's intentional. The reader should hear a ticking clock in the back of their heads, and it speeds up little by little every chapter. Lechad Demon says, yes, I understand that these events have been set up for a long time, and I don't think it was a bad thing. But I hope the finale does something extra to put them all together more neatly. Okay. Yash, you want to just say what you want? Instead of me reading? Come on.
Sure, sure. Okay. So I have like had a shit ton of work this weekend, and I didn't read all the chapters in one go. And I don't know, I had a lot of time to process like each. Ow, sorry, my dog is attacking me. Oh, go. Sorry. Sorry. So, yeah, I had a lot of time to process, like, each new incident that was popping up. And I think that was what Pirate intended as well, having the chapters segregated the way they were, so that, people don't get overwhelmed in one go. And I think that's why she's taking the break. Of course, because she needs rest, but for us too, to have a chance to process everything that's been put out.
Oh, that's a good thing. The way the pirate structured the release of the chapters is it seems it's often easy to forget that the web serial is also supposed to be published into a novel format. So if you were a new reader or a novel reader reading this on an ebook or listening to this on an audiobook, you would probably take some time between each chapter. And the way it's structured, you would have more time to process it and to absorb the little bits and bobs. I mean, did anybody else absorb it like that, or is it just Yash? While people respond to that question, IKEA Furniture's reaction is more so that there was such a vast amount of ghosts vanishing and doing things, and we got very thief. Okay, I just lost my brain.
Brief.
ActionKermit, can you read it out? I just need some water.
I'll read it. It's
Alright,
more
okay.
so that there was such a vast amount of ghosts vanishing and doing things, and we got a very brief skim of the kind of things that they were trying to do before then. It is not so much rushed, but that it could still use more detail and explanation of events happening. It is something that's kind of been an issue with the Deadlands. It really didn't get enough detail for the amount of stories and legends that encompass it. It was always only a small drop of all that could be seen in the Deadlands and characters. And although that's a valid point, we have to realize that at the end of the day, there's only so much that can be written about. Like, we already have a huge giant world that is expanded on bit by bit over 9 million words at this point. And adding in the Deadlands was always a bit of a it was always a bit of a background thing because you can't really get into all the stories that are possible in the Deadlands because there are just too many of them. But I understand that like having more of the Deadlands over time would have probably helped us feel more, be more emotional about them basically ending. Mystical Pie says, I also read the chapter over 2 days. Vesker says, read the chapter over 3 days. Sunshine giggles. Bookworm says, these final moments are a flickering film, a certain glimpse in a single perspective before another takes its place, a fractured view into the story of this world.
Oh god, did you guys have to hear everything I just said?
Not
We
completely.
didn't hear that much of it, but we could hear
Yes,
it.
yes, we did.
Alright.
Everything.
I completely forgot to mute my mic. Okay. This is why we're supposed to have like a mod in here, but Blues is missing. Alright, moving on. Sorry about that. I did have one thing. Asteria or somebody put up a little a reaction thing in the audio recorded chat, and how long did it take you to finish this chapter? I want to know how long it took the readers of the chapter to actually finish the chapter in the audio chat, not in the recorded part. Just tell us what kind of time period it took you. I saw some people saying 2-3 days. Some people. I remember when the chapter was released, there were a couple of people who finished within an hour. So insanity. I wish Quilly was here so we could ask him how long it took him. But there we go. All right. Oshi was the source of giggle. That's from Sunshine. Yeah, that's
let's-
that's.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
All right, let's
what?
continue reading the reactions. Yash
Yeah.
says, also, reading about the Deadlands gives me a headache. Again, I'm sure it is intended because it's not supposed to feel comfortable to those still living.
Wait, why does it give you a headache?
Yeah, if you want to expand on that, give us a little bit of info in chat.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to visualize in your head. And because perspectives keep changing, distances keep changing, uh, it feels, and maybe I'm like maybe that's the way I've imagined it, but it feels very wrong. And it feels
Right.
like I'm not supposed to be reading this for a very long time. Otherwise, it's, I'm going to have a very messed up perspective on the rest of the story. So I have to like read it in brief. I can't have too much explanation.
Yeah, that makes sense though. You're right that it's probably intentional because the Deadlands is, I mean, it's the afterlife and there's no solid ground, no particular rules even after there were. It's supposed to make you feel like you have no hold on it, and the only holds you have are the perspective of the readers. Pandroween says something interesting. I felt burnt out this finale. Hopefully, the story deflates to a slower pace next volume. Oh yeah, I love it, but it's a lot. It's like having a really, really good cheesecake, but it's so rich. There's so much of it. Even well-paced consumption will still make it difficult. Cosmic Chaos says I binged it and then had a mental food coma and took a day to process it all. Definitely. And we have Cerebri responding to clarifying their comment about the Deathland sequence feeling crushed, says the Droth people dying against the Dancing Man is a very emotional moment, but you wonder why they weren't coming to the aid of the Deathlands. Spriggana is supposed to be the super warrior who was defying the gods and fighting the seam workers, and the way she dies isn't some great struggle, but being convinced to give up. And I'm not a big fan of the waning and waxing. All these ghosts are passing on their power, skills, classes, legacies, and so much more. I feel like we're just going to have a bunch of plot device people who've been empowered by ghosts appearing where they are needed. And of course, there was a Princess of Blood because we need more people of the waxing world saying goblins are good. All right, that's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to finish up the comments, but I want to come back to this. Mel says, I can see where Lachad Demon is coming from. For example, Lady Rai is back in the Unseen Empire, but did not see what she did to free herself from the Circle of Thorns. However, there's a lot going on, and sometimes backline characters have to be skipped over. Sometimes frontline characters need to be skipped over. That happens in stories this large. Sometimes the story needs to move forward, or the story will grow out of control. Plus, the story is really about the Fae King Oberon, and everyone else is extra. Oberon certainly thinks so. Sunshine says, I've only read part 1 and a few paragraphs of part 2. Good luck! Bookworm goes, I myself read it around an hour and 6 minutes. Insanity. It only took me 5 minutes. Okay. Pandromine says, 3 hours? Question mark? Must have taken me about 2.5 hours, Lachad says. Over 2 to 3 days. I mostly read for a few minutes before sleep. Mystical Pie says, on the Deadlands, I think earlier Deadlands chapters were purposely written in a way that was very obfuscating. However, as more life returned to the Deadlands leading up to the restoration of skills, the writing style has become closer and closer to what we're used to. Edge Dancer, in response to Saburi's earlier content, says, I love the sacrifice of the people of Droth. I got emotional when I read the part about the children holding the hands of their parents. To be children in the Deadlands, they had to die early in life, probably with their parents outliving them. But they still gave their last chance for a single push against a god. We had quite a few what's the reaction? The Mercer reaction, to be honest, from quite a few people.
Some Mercer cries too.
Yeah. So before we're gonna move on to the next question, but just before we do that, I wanna respond to Saburi's thing. So here you pointed out two very particular events in the Deathlands that felt worse to you. The Droth and Spriggania. So for the Droth, I felt like it was pretty well established that ghosts are vulnerable to the gods. And it felt like the Droth pulled a gnome in that they kind of made themselves into this delicious feast that the gods should come to, and then immediately trapped them and pushed them off the side. So it felt like it made sense from a logical point of view why it was the way it was, and Pirate decided to structure it without explicitly stating the logical reasons why this would be set up, because it was a stronger viewpoint to see it happen from an emotional view, right? All the images and the kind of sacrificial points, and the fact that all of Droth is so ready to give of themselves, and they truly do believe that this is something that needs to happen. Spriggana, okay, she is probably the most powerful character that has barely any screen time ever. She's only in like 3 chapters, and somehow she's become to me one of the most tragic figures that Pyre has ever written. Here is a being who explicitly supported the gods. And to support a god is not a small thing. It's easy for us to gloss over that fact, but the real world, we have faith is not a small or light thing. we believe, and she has explicit confirmation of the beings that she believes in. She believes that they are worthy, that they are supposed to do these things, that they truly were worthy of her loyalty and all this, and then they turn around and prove her wrong. And even at the end, she refuses to fight them. It's hard to see her as a super fight. You mentioned that it seemed like she was defying the gods. She's not defying the gods. It's explicit in both text and implied as well that she avoids fighting the gods, because even now, even as she says that she's grieving over the fact that they turned out not to be as good as she had hoped, and that they're failing to live up to the ideals that they espouse and the beings that they were supposed to be, she still can't bring herself to spit in their faces, to harm them, to strike them, because they are still her gods. And that is a very poetic moment, and it's hard for people to process that, but I think it's very important to process it. And for the Princess of Blood moment, I don't know if she is a goblin. She could have been a vampire.
I think she was a vampire. Yeah.
She could have been a vampire, yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on. I just wanted to respond to that because I think those are very important moments that need the kind of breath that should be spoken about. Wiggles, you want to tackle this one?
Yep. So we're now switching gears to our next question, which is, what was your favorite moment from the chapter and why? So how about I'll give my favorite moment first, and then we'll do ActionKermit and you, Oshi, to see what you
Sure.
are, what you
Okay.
all like, and then we'll do Linu. We'll let Linu talk next. But my favorite moment in the chapter was the Drath scene. I was a really big fan of just that picture we were drawn of how Drath is basically the outpost remnant of all of a giant continent that, you know, basically kept a lot of what they were at their peak, but they're still waning, even though, you know, they have all these ghosts and all this knowledge from prior to getting their continent destroyed. It was just really interesting to see that those little lore tidbits in there, and I really love the push for Devi to get thrown off to the last tide. It was really an impactful scene for me, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, how about you? How about you, Kermit and Oshi?
Yeah, my favorite moment was actually really brief. It was when Serept was marching off to fight Norechel. You know, the revelation that, you know, this king who had filled the vaults of Kelt when he was a boy was just a half giant who had no shoes. You know, and just the simple charity of Kelt taking him in paid them back 100,000 fold as he became, you know, the ruler of millennia there. You know, that's sort of an illustration of how Kelt became a paradise not because of the undead at their command, but because of the people who lived there, and that was really striking to me.
I hesitate to mention my favorite moment because there was quite a bit of pushback. And there was some spicy commentary that happened on this, but I really enjoyed the quiet moment. And I think of it as a quiet moment where the the prince stepped forward out of the crowd and became a princess and actualized herself in the Deadlands, and she invited all these queer folks to join her, and there was like it was a quiet moment, it was a small moment, it barely mattered in the greater scheme of things, and yet it was present, and for me it really did bring, it almost got me to cry. Pirate almost got me to cry. It didn't happen, not in real, like, but I still welled up and I felt it, and it's one of those things where it isn't explicit. There's no explanation of why there isn't. So for outside of queer perspective, it's going to be a little confusing. Everything about that moment fit. She's a princess of Keys. She's hiding herself. It's very clear she's staying in the closet, even in the Deadlands. She's clearly part of a larger group of people who are doing the same thing, who are even in death. They're keeping their queerness, and yet she comes from a place with secrets and stuff, and it's very like implied that she is one of the people who has made it possible for others to be safe and created a safe place in both the Deadlands and once did in life, and it's represented. And the biggest thing is that the system itself acknowledged the fact that she is herself. It wasn't nothing else changed that. I mean, she was a princess. She was not a prince. She didn't matter what her physical form was. She was a princess, and that's all that mattered. And people gave titles and shit, but that didn't matter. When you read her class, that's what it was. It was just really powerful, but it's such a small moment, and it mattered to me. And here's my compliment, you assholes who keep insisting I do it. Thank you, Pirate. I really did appreciate that.
Yeah, that was definitely a very poignant scene. I think the one issue I had with that scene was simply where it was placed in the chapter. I think if it was done earlier in the more conversational tone rather than directly leading up to um, the conflict we had, I think it would have been a better place to have it. But that's just like a little nitpicky detail. The other thing is, I saw a comment a little bit ago. I think it was a Patreon comment, but they mentioned that there weren't any male, female ghosts going over to the men's side, and I thought that was kind of like a little oversight on Pirate Abba's part, because you would expect to see both changing, not just some men coming over to the female side. Or
I
you know
think
what
it
I mean by that.
was, yeah, I think it was just because the again, the scope of the scene was so small, and the action by the princess was explicitly to invite those who are princesses to take their slot in this kind of matriarchal moment. And because it's part of the matriarchal moment, there wasn't any explicit, like, obvious scene development of the masculine side of this. Just because of that. I don't think it was an oversight. I think it's just for the scene itself. It was all about all the princesses and queens coming together. You can't talk about the princes and stuff in a scene about the women.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah.
Yeah.
Linu, you wanted to speak about your favorite moment.
Oh,
Yes.
wait. Was that what you
Hmm?
wanted to talk about? I thought you wanted to answer the question. What question?
I mean, like that question that Wiggles asked, which
Oh!
moment was our favorite?
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
So for me, it was stuff that I think many people overlooked, but for me, it was quite huge because I kept talking about it for quite some time. That God era in Inward had to be something more than just bad times. That it had to be like also a good times. And for me, when we had a description of gods that they are bigger than just like simple beings, that they are ideas given form, that they are beings made of like immortal things that and dreams. Like look at Tamarot, when we had description of him that we only see tiny part of him and not like full Tamarot in his full form. And we had that description when there was Kawin and Sprigaena, when she was hesitating to take her hand, but we had that little small part when it was said that back in God's era, it like they fought, there were quarreling over stuff, but it wasn't always like this. That there were also times when mortals and gods were walking hand by hand without fear. That it wasn't all just bad times, that there were also good times between gods and mortals. That was like the huge part for me.
Okay, that's pretty damn cool. Wiggles, you want to keep going with the reactions?
Yeah. So, Vesker, I'm not going to read off your reaction because I think that fits for the next question, but I'll come back to it for that next question. Edge Dancer says, favorite moment was actually two-ish moments combining into one. Terry's daughter told Aaron whenever he had a chance, he flew. And the last line of part 3 being, Terry bend his wings to fly, or something along those lines. Loved the full circle promise. He's a grand person. He's just so dang tired. Yeah, the Terry moment in the chapter, just like rereading it, it really hits home because he was described as like just being so tired in the Deadlands he didn't even want to do anything, and it really hits home uh how old he is and how many causes he's gone through that he's just so exhausted from everything.
He's the epitome of like immortality in that way, because what kills an immortal is never, it might not be age, but it's just the accumulation of millennia and centuries, and just time itself wears away at you until non-existence is, there's a reason why even immortals eventually seek death. You just can't keep going forever like this. Where I don't think any biological being should keep going forever. We're not rocks, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's all the living he's done, and it's come to this point where he's so tired. Bookworm says, I think my favorite moment was the final salute the inhabitants of Avalon gave to the dead and living. They had all left their worlds for various reasons, and they used their power to try and help this world, so they would not have to do the same.
You want Mr. ActionKermit, you want to take over reading the comments to give Wiggles and me a little break?
Sure.
Thanks.
So let's see now where are we?
We're on Mystical Pie.
Yeah, there we go.
3:31. Yeah.
Yep. So Mystical Pie says that their favorite moment was finding out Terry's soft spot for young, headstrong women probably comes from his love for his daughter. Yeah, that was a very sweet moment, just knowing that he had that connection there. So Saburi says that their favorite moment is a tie between the High Passes brawl and the reveal that Terriarch had a daughter. The High Passes brawl was really illustrating how Rafema has a long way to go. Even if she is a dragon, she has like no practice at being one. So let's see. I believe IKEA Furniture is responding to the commentary about the Princess of Blood, right? I think that's what it was. It says she was a vampire. She had fangs, and it mentioned blood red eyes. So that raises the question about vampire royalty and nobility back in Terrandar is deep past. Casual Cranium says that the part about Draft's Tower, which visitors see as a monumental achievement, actually being a border outpost, which pales in comparison to what was lost. Yeah, that's really striking. It's just a hint that there was this huge story there. I often think that when the Wandering Inn is over, I would absolutely love to see stories about what happened during that distant past. Just pull the curtain back and show us all this crazy stuff that was happening back then. It's such a cool backstory, and there's so much of it for the Wandering Inn. Chad, yes.
As if we're not going to see it in the main storylines, or the multiple side storylines, or the comic book. It's just not going to happen.
Who knows? So the Chad Demon says Razia beating the unliving souls out of the gods had me with a grin over the whole moment. Yeah, Razia was just amazing when they came out to fight Tamaroth. So let's see. Wiggles asked, "What's your favorite moment?" And then Agent Fogg said it was naked Agalum. Go figure. I guess the people would be into that. So
creep 5 degenerates agreed with them too, so we'll just move on from there.
So NMNM195, that's quite a handle there, said they would like to say their favorite moment in the chapter would be the drop that not what stuck in their mind is the moment when Raziev House Shoal just started to pound Tamaroth, and that got them laughing. So yeah, that was just a crowning moment there, because so little had actually stopped the gods. So Violet agrees and just loves that moment. Veskar says that their favorite moment for them was Phythea's betrayal of Ryoka and her loved ones, and Very's reaction to that. It was nice to see that he genuinely cared about another one of the immortals. Yeah, that just drove home that the battle lines were not clear at all there. There was someone that ancient from the first days that could have been a hazard to absolutely everyone around her if Casigna came back, and she just didn't have the chance to do that to people for centuries or millennia. And then she finally became this time bomb. after Casigna returned. So that was another really tragic moment there. Let's see.
Hang on, let me do this one. So Saburi asked a question because they weren't quite sure, and said, "I was confused why the class changed when the person changed was a hidden class." The response was given in the chat itself, but there was no change in class. The implication of the passage was that she was always a princess, but people named her a prince, and her body was that of a male prince. That's all it was. There was never any class change. It was just a reveal of who she was. Okay, go on.
Okay. So Webwoven says it's a little weird, but their favorite moment is when Rafe gave up their armor for the Wyvern Lord, and they think that it will be an incredibly impactful moment going forwards for her, and I really like what she's turning into. Yeah, so I mean, it's possible that there could be some kind of reconciliation with the Wyvern Lords there, but that was shedding her pride for a larger goal was quite something. She found out it was driven home that she had a long way to go. So yeah, this is opening up possibilities for character growth. Yes,
She did learn a little bit faster than Niers. Didn't need to lose an arm or anything.
Okay, so Mystical Pie says that they also love the moment where all the queer royals swapped sides. More of a question, but was the implication that she already had the princess class when she was alive? Okay, so that's a duplication of the question that Oshi answered earlier.
Yeah, that's why I answered that one. You can just skip.
Yes. Okay, so and then we have a couple of people who were all sort of having meta discussions. So anyway, passing on to Sunshine. Sunshine said that even rocks are worn down by the winds and rain over time. Yeah, that's responding to Terrariarch there. There was that early commentary in the beginning of part 1 that I was rereading before we had this discussion about how to look at the gods was to understand you can live so long that you forget even who you are. And that's part of the unique terror of the gods themselves is that even they don't remember who they were. So Yash points out one of their favorite moments was how Rafa was curled up under Terry's wing. It showed how much she sought a loving presence that understood her and could probably care for her more than what she was or represented. Yeah, that was both heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. I really hope that the young dragons have an opportunity to interact with Terry and to grow through having a parent figure that they can look up to, I think. So Onion Little says that they loved a couple of moments. The Princess of Key stepping out, Rifema curling up next to Terry's body, and the fact that Oberon was confirmed twice as mischievous as his whole court are just on a multiversal scale. Recipe of bitch slapping Tamaroth and a whole lot of ghosts recognizing her was great too. Yeah, that was pretty amazing. Okay. Yes?
I love that they recognized her when she was naked.
Yeah,
Okay.
that says something right there.
That pirate is a degenerate and feeds the other degenerates in this server and all the readers.
Yep.
I see you.
There's the horny pyramid theory for a reason. It all
Yeah,
starts
you know
at the
what?
top.
Where's my dude? Where's the Lucifin version of this? I need a fucking dude. Where's the giant? Where's the hot dude? What the fuck?
Yeah, so the Agilum were already confirmed in an earlier chapter to be definitely on the horny end of the scale when they were talking about the list that with Ryoka. But anyway, let's move on to the next question here. So Mr. Wiggles is asking, what is the weakest storyline and why? And I personally can't think of something because it was so climactic, but I feel like this question is Oshi bait. So Oshi, why don't you answer it?
Well, okay, we could do that, but Mr. Wiggles, you were waiting to incorporate Vesker's response?
Yeah, the Vesker's response basically applies to this question, and Vesker says, I really liked most of the last chapters, but what really somewhat soured the last chapters for me is the Eren chase sequence. I don't even mind the funnier parts, but Eren flopping back and forth between no, don't sacrifice yourself to buy me time, and staring at the next thing, wasting time. She needed to be dragged away or be told she needs to get on running again multiple times, which makes all the sacrifices feel entirely wasted to me.
Okay. I'm gonna respond to Lachad. You want to talk about that one?
Me? The
Yeah.
weakest storyline, or Lachad Demon
No,
says
no,
the
no, no,
weakest.
no, no. Mr. I mean, talk about what Vesker's response means. Why'd you hold it back? Do you agree with him or her or them,
Oh,
whatever?
oh, I don't necessarily agree. Like I get where Vesker is coming from right there with basically the Aaron sequence in the dead being kind of her running around, I mean, being kind of like a plot contrivance in some ways. As in she's doing this purely to like buy time uh for Fettlhep and everyone to get to her body, and she's doing it in like a roundabout way where she's going all around the world, and she's ending up in Chandra or not Chandra, in Tarandria to meet some people, and it feels a little plots contrived to have it happen. And so I definitely see where Veskar is coming from, but I don't necessarily agree that it ruined it for me because I think those sacrifices still mean something. It just Aaron is basically being our vehicle for what is surprising and what is happening in the Deadlands here. So she needs to pause a few times. She needs to look around a few times to see what's happening, and it kind of is a little difficult to do that without making it seem to not flow as well, I should say. So I do understand where Vesker is coming from. I just don't necessarily agree with them
My
on how
thing
weak it
about
is.
all of I kind of agree that that was the weakest part, but it was a consequence of the structure of the chapter. In the case of how it's written out, you need someone to act as the prospective vehicle, the person that we're looking through, and that oftentimes has always been Aaron. And this is what Aaron does a lot of times in a lot of prior chapters. It's just here you're kind of frustrated with her because, or at least for me, it was frustrating because you had some part of me had finally hoped after the gnome's sacrifice that she would pick up on the fact that yeah, it's time for you to stop bitching around and do something. Now then we kind of repeat the theme multiple times with other people sacrificing themselves for her. All I'm saying is if she comes out of the Deadlands and is still like, I can't do this. I might fail. How could I ever? Fuck you, bitch. Do something. All right. So we'll move on to the next thing. Chad Demon says, and this is very interesting, and I had a commentary on this. The weakest storyline is to me Teriarch dying to a single spell off continent without going in depth about it. I don't necessarily agree on the specifics of what was weak about it, but I do feel like the Teriarch storyline was incredibly well telegraphed. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, but it does make it a weaker plot line in terms of like the resurrection. I knew the resurrection was going to happen. That's the thing. It took away the tension in a little bit, but that's because I read this story obsessively and I knew about this a year and a half in advance. The moment he got hit in the head, I knew Teriarch was going to die. I'd been sort of puzzling out the fact that the whole simulacrum storyline and creating Eldavin, what was a safe way to make Teriarch, the Dragon Lord of Flame, Flame Daddy, vulnerable? I mean, think about the hoops that it would have taken to get him in a position to be vulnerable, and why make him vulnerable in this particular way? Because, well, there might be a few people who know how to, fuck with the simulacrum and kill him. Who are the few people who know? Well, maybe the god who declared to Aaron and made Aaron say the words, he's gonna be dead in a few days. Like, who else could it have been? The I credit Pirate for telegraphing it so well and for building the plot line over time and then following through with it. But it did make the resurrection both predictable but still satisfying. It's still satisfying, but it was a little predictable. You want to keep going, Wiggles, or you want me to?
Sure, I'll keep going.
Okay.
Yakovic says, weakest storyline to me has been everything that happens in Tarandria. I don't know what it is about it, but I'm just mentally screaming, give me Israel or Chandra. And possibly it is the lack of fun characters. Trandrian immortals might be powerful or whatever, but give me Kisumver talks, please. Also, Aaron has been fleeing gods as much time as Ryoko was running to give meds to Tyrion's kids. At some point, it's just too much running. Uh, on the Tarandria thing, I definitely I can see like how some of the characters are pretty off-putting for some people. I personally really enjoy Rabbit Eater though, and Ryoka has her moments, and I've loved learning about the immortals and Alien Damas, so I'm excited for more Tarandria in the future as long as there's some good Rabbit Eater action in there. Asteria says, hard disagree. I've loved the story development with Kara and our Hufflepuff Goblin and Tarandria. There are plenty of fun characters there, but we need to spend more time with them. Ditto to this for Belarus as well. Bookworm says, sad reheared noises. Yash says, for me, it was the anticlimactic death of Devourer of Time. There was so much build-up, and it almost felt like he was killed off screen.
Wait. What? Okay. I'm confused. He was killed off screen?
It almost felt like that, as in
Yeah.
it was kind of glossed over, but it did happen on screen, is I think what Yash means.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Seburi says, okay.
Yo, Oshi is cursing. Yes, I'm cursing. I do that quite often.
Yokuzin, I think is your name. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Says, the weakest storyline for me was the Ryoka Scroll storyline. She'd been there for so long, building all these relationships. Then she gets a helpful distraction from the Deadlands and snags the scroll and is out the door in a span of 2 paragraphs. Would have liked a side-by-side chase scene of Ryoka plus Aaron running parallel in Casignal and in-world away from the Aelin Damas capital, and for them to see the magic from both sides as it worked to revive Teriarch. We might actually get more Teriarch scenes next chapter. But would you say?
I was gonna say that might come out. You never know. I mean, we're I think on the 6th ebook or something, 7th ebook. So when it gets rewritten or updated, Pirate might go back and punch those scenes up. Because I always got the feeling that from the tension and the way the Pirate structured the scene, that was supposed to happen. Because you could see all of the setup being there, but clearly Pirate didn't have time to cover it, so it got cut.
Yeah, there's always room for improvement in these kinds of scenes, but at the end of the day, they do have to cut it at some point, and they have to release it at some point. And that's kind of the issue with the web serial format, but I won't get into that for too long. Alarms for a Day says, the Sur Solstice storyline hasn't really spoken to me outside of the Rabbit Eater and the fighting bits, and even that's gotten a tad repetitive now. It's just the order of seasons seem almost like caricatures, just meant to react a certain way like robots, always sticking to their whole knightly honor kind of thing, and wow, Sir Solstice, that was really smart / brave / cool of you. I like the general soldiers and knights he fights against a lot more than the Order of Seasons. Oh man, really? I love the Order of Seasons. I love Marcus. Marcus is great. Oshi, do you want to take over? Or ActionKermit? Either of you.
Actually, have Kermit be our backup because I'm tired too.
Okay, so let's see. We're on the Mystical Pie one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Mystical Pie said that in response to Lachad Demon's earlier comment, they said that the plot point for Teriarch's death has been set up for a while with all the work Emerhain has been doing through Aaron. The mechanism through which the simulacrum is killed makes a lot of sense also. Even though we knew Ryoka would probably use a scroll on him, it might have been a little more effective if Pirate forced us to sit with Terry being dead between updates. So, yeah, that was a... I think it was pretty clear that Terry was going to be resurrected because he was probably the single highest value target for the scroll. And also, he's just such a cool character, it would be terrible to just drop him instantly. But, yeah, the approach that Emerhain took to killing Terry, I thought was pretty innovative, and we did get some foreshadowing there. So we have another comment from Asteria, and I'm throwing in a couple of ums just to keep Area entertained. One of the weaker parts for me actually has to be the gods' death or captures. They were made out to be gaining power and thus harder to combat, and suddenly we're seeing them drop left and right, it seems. The gnome's trick made sense, but she's not sure what's happening to the others has been believable so far based on the information that we provided about all the battle participants. Yeah, I was surprised by the Laedonius Devi, I believe is his name, actually
Yes.
getting defeated by Drath. So that is a huge credit to the power that Drath has accumulated. They probably spent ages refining themselves specifically to do something like this. But yeah.
I mean, it made sense to me. It was a surprise. It also makes sense why the gods have been avoiding Droth. They understand that they weren't strong enough to fight that kind of refinement, the resistance that Droth could put up.
Yep. Okay. So, Happy Panda says that the Sir Solstice plotline is basically Aaron's agent being sent to Tarian Daria for her eventual conquest and order establishment. Such a cunning move that she herself does not know it. Very sneaky, yes. The Order of Solstice is gaining steam. They are all going to have metal arms. It's going to be a thing. So the Chad Demon says that they didn't imagine a god to work for so long just to kill a dragon lord. There must be something specific about Teriarch that threatens the gods. That's kind of interesting. I always thought of Teriarch as someone who would get along with Tamaroth if Tamaroth wasn't such a huge jerk. So, he's an example of the gods being made to embody concepts that have moved on, and society is moving on without them, and they're just not changing except to rot. You have to grow or rot. Change is inevitable, but they've been trying to hold back all forms of change, and they just decline as a result, I think. So, Seberi, or Keberi, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, said Wistrom's storyline hurts them. You would think that Wistrom would learn from their mistakes and fears and become better after multiple failings in the story, but instead we see a lot of Cognita being a bully babysitter, Teriarch or Ozdava not really helping the situation, and everyone in Wistrom being rather secretive and disloyal. The place just gets worse and worse, and the nail in the coffin for them is the fact that they don't even get a perspective seeing the aftermath of the heist and Wistrom picking up the pieces. It may be a while. The Pirate has so many irons in the fire at this point. There's so many different perspectives that it's hard to, cover everything and still get the volume done in 1.5 million words, which is, I think, where we are right now.
That's one perspective. Mine is that Wistrom was explicitly laid out as a dysfunctional space, and we have never seen the ghost of Zelkir.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing. Zelkir might still be out there for all we know. He might be stuck like the putrid one. I don't know. So
I'm gonna go. There was a very, very interesting crack theory written in Patreon debate, in Patreon spoilers. Someone pointed out that if Phthia could have been an agent in the real world, what if Zelkir was Emerhoon's agent? Emerhoon tricked him into being in a spot and then plugging up the magic so that Emerhoon could be the one who ends up controlling all that fucking magic.
Aha.
I tried to think about it for a second, and I was like, there's got to be an argument. Oh, no. There's no... yeah? That kind of made too much sense. It made too much sense. He's a greedy bitch, and all Emerhoon would have to do is convince him to, hey, give this little spell out. Don't worry about it. It'll just take away the Null's magic, and it'll make your Drake safer. And don't worry too much. Here, you can go to this room, this secret room. I'll even give you the code for the secret room. Oh, sorry, the code locks you in and traps you forever. After you've locked everybody out. Evil laugh. Okay.
Okay, so something I would like to point out right now is that Asteria has requested that we keep the recording to an hour, and it has been 1 hour since we started.
Yeah, let's wrap up.
Well,
We'll wrap it up.
It's been about 50 minutes, so we'll
wrap up in about one more question, and then we'll wrap it up, and then we'll go to just us discussion. Yeah. So just do the last bit with Ranaris.
Okay, so Ranaris is responding to Asteria, talking about the gods' deaths and captures. Ranera says that it feels like it's two things. One, skills got turned back on, so some of the faith-based classes should be able to impact them. And two, cultivators were mentioned to improve their souls, so maybe that's why they were able to do what they did. Yeah, the use of cultivation to improve their souls is an interesting development, and I feel like that's something that the people in Listgore, the faith-based classes that Pawn has and the others, would do well to develop themselves.
Okay. So we're gonna move on to the next question, and I'll take this one, Wiggles.
Well, one thing I would like to say before that is everyone just keep in mind you guys can all speak if you want to. If you just ping us, you can speak out loud. Just keep that in mind if anyone else wants to actually speak instead of just us. But go ahead, Oshi.
Yeah, it can get, as you see, we're passing it around between the three of us because it gets tiring. And I talk a lot in general, but it's nice to hear everybody else's voices. And I haven't been poking people to come speak, but I will at some point. Because
So,
once
can I speak? Can I interrupt
Hey,
you?
no. Let me just finish this question real fast because it's kind of important. We got to finish this stuff up and then we can talk. So, Mr. Wiggles posted this question: was Teriarch's resurrection earned? And how'd you feel about it when he died versus when he was brought back? So Saburi comes out straight up and says it happened way too fast. Terry is dead for less than a day, and then he gets revived almost instantly. Yakovic says the death was lacking. Certainly, if it was a true death, some dragon flashbacks would ensue. The lack of weight made the following resurrection evident. The scene of the resurrection was rad, though. Agent Fogg says, I'm glad Terry's back, but I would have preferred if they brought back Titania. I hope the prophecy that Ivaleth mentions is meant to achieve that. Eventually. Pasnira 12 says, it was mentioned Terry should have been left dead between updates. That's something I strongly disagree with, to be honest, because it would have felt fake. I actually expected Terry to do something to help Aaron in the Deadlands before being. Hermit says, you might say he wasn't dead for long. What?
I don't get that pun.
I don't know.
I know it's supposed to be a pun because
Right,
it's Kermit, but I don't get it.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it. NMN M195 says, too fast, I would say, and I kind of wanted him to stay dead and come back at the same time as Aaron. Now, that would have been cool if they both were revived together, as if, and they kind of, there was a parallel, but, I get it. It's complicated. Sunshine says, Kawine is changing. I guess that was a comment to something else. Lachad Demon says, I think it was a sensible choice, considering Aaron has a big chunk of the world working to bring her back. Discanter, hey Discanter, not enough seeing of you. Another interesting thing about the gods getting taken out is that it is not being done by any of the main cast. True. Kel says, I would 100% perceive Zelkir would be that level of dick. I assume that's in response to my repeating the crack theory. Saburi is... Yes, I am pronouncing it. Saburi. I was like, Saburi? So, yes, Saburi it is. Happy Panda says, Terry just got the death revival treatment Zern wishes Wormver got. At least it would get his ass moving. Holy crap, that's right. That's like exactly what happened. Terry needed to die to get a kick in the ass to come back and actually do something. Dude! That's such a brilliant parallel. Brax says they gave a pretty good explanation for the not resurrecting Titania. I agree. I mean, if it was that easy, they would have done it a long time ago. They're fucking Fae, guys. They know about this shit. They've been around since the God Wars. They know about resurrection scrolls. Yash says, I wouldn't have minded seeing Eldavin's ghost being left behind, and Terry has no memory of what happened after Cognita's fight. Rosie wants to speak. Hi, Rosie!
I just came in, and yeah, I'd say I actually really liked the whole revival, but part of what I really loved about it was Ryoka questioning whether it was the right option for Terry. I think that really showed her personal connection to him. I think that really showed her care for him as a person. It's a question that's not often asked and not often addressed. And I'm glad it was addressed, before she revived him, even if we didn't know. And I remember in chat after the chapter, someone mentioned that Teriarch, someone quoted one of Teriarch's things where he says, oh, it's her, it's always been her, and we didn't quite know what he meant whether he was talking about Magnolia or the harpy gal, and now we realize it was his daughter, which is equal parts really fun to find out that the reason he's attached to all of these young, feisty women is because of his daughter, and also really sad because it's because his daughter died trying to do shit. Yep.
That hit. That really did hit hard. I do wish, again, it's one of those sacrifices. Likely, Pirate cut the scene a little bit, but could you imagine the time, like having her be incorporated a little bit more into the story would have been so amazing. All we got is a glimpse, which actually made it hit a little bit harder. But on that note, on the note of Terriarch's resurrection, we're gonna close up the recorded portion of this discussion.
But before we close it up, one thing that Asteria wanted us to go through at the very end was, if you guys look into audio announcement, there's a participant poll, and if you guys could react to that comment so we know if you're public or if you're Patreon. So, and I'll read that out at the very end. But we're going to keep doing the discussion, and we'll keep doing it a little more structured since we have so many questions to go through. And we're not going to do all of them today or anything, but we are going to do at least the 2 other discussion questions once this recording is over. But since it's not recorded, if anyone who wanted to speak and didn't want to because of the recording, you can speak then. But
Yeah.
all right, I gave people a couple minutes or a couple seconds to do this participant poll, and 10 people have reacted that they're a public reader, and 22 people have reacted that they're Patreon reader. And we have a total of 44 people in here right now, so there are a few of you who didn't do it, but that's okay.
But that's okay. Well, that's not a bad breakdown.
Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed yourself. If you are listening in on a recording, we'll try to have this up relatively early. Our goal is to try to do these public versions maybe once a month. We might not do it on this server exactly because there can be issues, but we'll do it where we can.
Yeah, I think one thing that we might consider doing in the future, at least for the next chapter, is just doing the after chapter discussion for both Patreon and public at the same time, since it might come out at the same time.
Oh yeah,
But
we're gonna do that. Definitely.
yeah, so we'll do that here instead of in the other chapter.
Yeah.
But other
But
than that, there might be some events, audio events, we decided to do in this server instead of the other server over the break, since we're all on the same page now.
Yeah, and we'll get into it. But thanks everybody who's listening in. I hope you guys will find it in yourself to come join us. I know it's hard to listen to podcasts, not everybody loves it, and not everybody loves listening in. But you can come into an active discussion. There's lots of us here. This is like a big book club, and we're going to try and do it once a month.